Welcome, everyone. I'm back with chapter 5 in how to deal with difficult relationships. And this chapter, called conflict resolution, will be solving your people problems, where this may help in bridging the gaps that separate people. So, in efforts to just shine more light on biblical music and biblical artists, I want to share a line from one of my favorite artists that I listen to. If the brother ever comes across this, just feel free to reach out to me if you don't want your material shared, and I don't mind taking it down. Nonetheless, here we go. They did everything in power trying to silence the bruise. Transparent, full circle, all around the world, to the world over. Definitions of conflict resolution. Gather two or more people together, and you can have a montage of differing personalities, priorities, perceptions, and preferences. A concoction ripe for fascinating conversations, but also for formidable conflict. Rather than hands shaking in agreement, the result can be fingers pointing in accusation. Welcomed words of blessing can be replaced by caustic words of bitterness. From the very beginning, the first people God created, Adam and Eve, and their offspring, experienced conflict. The Bible clearly shows that all who came after them certainly experienced conflict. All through the ages and even today, similar struggles have continued to occur anywhere and everywhere people gather. Who hasn't at times wanted to throw their hands up in the air and exclaim, "Why can't we all just get along?" Well, we can when we live with pure hearts and pure motives and pure principles. The Word of God provides principles for peace that can result in lasting reconciliation and resolution. One of those principles is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11. Encourage one another and build each other up. Living in obscurity as a Jewish orphan, she seems the least likely candidate to be the mediator, the only mediator, to save her people from sure destruction. However, the Lord knows her heart. He knows that Esther will face the most critical conflict of her life with complete humility and total confidence in his provision. The conflict arises because a conniving official in the king's court named Haman devises a plot to murder all the Jewish people in the empire. His fury has been flamed by a man who refuses to bow down to him, namely Esther's cousin Mordecai, who has raised her. Little does Esther know she will carry the fate of the Jewish people on her shoulders as she faces and seeks to resolve a conflict of epic proportions. Yet Mordecai aptly poses this thought-provoking question. Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? How does young, obscure Esther become involved in this critical conflict? The book of Esther recounts her story. After days of feasting, King Xerxes is in high spirits from wine. Esther chapter 1, verse 10. And he wants to show off the stunning beauty of his wife before the people and nobles. He sends 7 attendants to summon her. However, the queen does the unthinkable and refuses to come. The king is furious because of her refusal, and his advisors feel action has to be taken, otherwise there will be no end of disrespect and discord. Esther chapter 1, verse 18. Heeding the advice of his closest counselors, the king immediately issues a royal decree. The queen can never again enter into the king's presence, and she will be replaced. Esther chapter 1, verses 19 through 21. With this new edict, the outward conflict between the king and queen appears to be resolved, but the resolution of one conflict gives rise to another. Now the king has no queen. What is a conflict? Throughout the kingdom, a major search ensues to find a distinguished queen for the disgruntled king. All the beautiful young virgins in the land are rounded up so that the young woman who pleases the king can be selected as queen. Esther chapter 2, verse 4. Esther, described as a young woman who had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Esther chapter 2, verse 7. Quickly gains favor. At cousin Mordecai's instruction, she does not reveal her Jewish heritage. Meanwhile, wise Mordecai saves the king's life by reporting an assassination plot against him. The event is recorded in reference of the king. After a full year of preparation and pampering, Esther finally stands before the king, who was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and made her queen instead. Esther's feet are now firmly planted on the path of God's divine purpose, but she's also on a collision course with a colossal conflict, a challenge far greater than replacing a dishonored queen. Conflicts are disagreements, struggles, or battles over opposing issues or principles. Conflictus, the Latin word, means an act of striking together or clashing with. Conflict in the letters of Paul is often presented by using forms of the Greek word agon, from which the English word agony developed. Originally used to describe a gathering of spectators for the Greek athletic games, this word changed over time to refer to various types of conflict and became a metaphor in the New Testament to describe spiritual conflict, intense labor, or trial. The Apostle Paul said, I want you to know how hard I am contending for you, and for all who have not met me personally. Colossians chapter 2, verse 1. What is the difference between resolution and reconciliation? Soon, a personal power struggle begins when a top royal official becomes infuriated with Mordecai, who day after day refuses to bow down to him when he passes by the royal gate. When he discovers Mordecai is a Jew, he manipulates the king and convinces him to order an official decree mandating the massacre of all Jews, every man, every woman, and child. He thinks he has won the conflict, but he will never get the homage his insatiable ego pursues. In fact, he will one day pay for his actions at a very high and horrific cost. When he saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet, having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only him. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all of his people, the Jews throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Esther chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Once the king's decree is pronounced throughout the provinces, the fate of the Jewish people seems doomed. No constructive conflict resolution is in sight. However, Mordecai appeals to Esther for help, and she can't believe what he asks her to do. Approach the king unannounced and uninvited. He knows the law. Any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned by the king has but one law. They be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter. Esther chapter 4, verse 11. Since Esther has not been summoned by the king for 30 days, how can she go to the king to plead on behalf of her people? What if the king becomes displeased with her, clearly going to the king will, meaning putting her life on the line, to which Mordecai responds that her life is on the line anyway. Esther chapter 4, verse 13. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. Resolution versus reconciliation. Resolution and reconciliation are different. Here's how. Resolution means finding the answer or analyzing a complex notion into simpler ideas. Reconciliation means 100% restoration to harmony, to bring together again. Some differences may never be resolved, but you can still be reconciled to those whom you differ. At other times, resolution of differences may be responsible, but reconciliation may be inappropriate, such as in the case of adultery or cult entrapment. God requires only that as much as it is possible, you seek to be at peace with everyone. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. Forgiveness and reconciliation. Question. Is forgiveness the same as reconciliation? Answer. No. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness focuses on the offense. Reconciliation focuses on the relationship. Forgiveness requires no relationship, while reconciliation requires nurturing a relationship, two people in agreement, walking together toward the same goal. The Bible asks in Amos chapter 3, verse 3, do two walk together unless they have agreed? Do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? What are some different types of conflict? Suddenly, Esther is facing an inner conflict just as heavy, just as grave, and just as deadly as the outer conflict caused by the royal official. On multiple levels, Esther has a conflicted soul. Where will she find the strength, the courage to do what needs to be done? What must be done? The scripture could apply to Esther's critical situation. Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife, and conflict abounds. Intrapersonal conflict, a struggle within a person to decide between two or more choices. Does Esther approach the king in an attempt to save the Jewish people from annihilation, which could earn her a death sentence? Or does she remain silent and take her chances of being spared now she is queen? She has no illusions about the risk. In Esther chapter 4, verse 11, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Interpersonal conflict, a clash of ideas or interests between two or more people. In the book of Esther, malicious plots from the top royal official to have Mordecai murdered only because Mordecai refuses to bow down to him. When he saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Intra-organizational conflict, a competitive or opposing action within a group, a family, a department, a church, a political party, a state, or a nation. In the book of Esther, the king's chief noble and the king's queen are on a collision course that will cost one of them dearly. One of them will die, not by the hand of an outsider, but by the hand of their own king. The king becomes enraged after realizing that he has been manipulated into issuing a death sentence to murder all the Jewish people. The king got up in a rage, left his wine, and went into the palace garden. But the official, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Inter-organizational conflict, a battle or opposing action between two or more groups, families, companies, religions, or countries. In the book of Esther, because of the officials in the book of Esther, because of the officials' plot, the Persian nation threatens to annihilate the entire Jewish population, men, women, and children. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, and to plunder their goods. Conflict fills the pages in the book of Esther, just as conflict abounds in many lives. Disharmony in the home, wars in the workplace, the should I or the shouldn't I struggles. All try us and ought to lead us to the one whom Esther will turn for the strength, courage, and resolution she needs. His name isn't even mentioned in the book of Esther, but his sovereignty spreads itself like a shadow over every chapter. The Bible tells us in Psalm 68, verse 20, our God is a God who saves. From the sovereign Lord comes escape from death. Who creates conflict and who keeps it going? Drastic times call for drastic measures. Esther asks Mordecai to gather all the Jews, in one of the empire's main capitals, and has them go 3 entire days without food and drink. She and her maids do the same. Esther enlists the people of God to fast and to pray for rescue. and for a resolution to the most formidable conflict of her life. Esther chapter 4, verse 16. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in the main capital, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Esther's act of faith works to open the king's heart. She approaches him without having been summoned, and he graciously extends his golden scepter, granting her an audience. When he inquires about the unannounced visit, the queen makes her request. Esther invites the king and the top royal official to a banquet, and the king seems eager to fulfill her wishes. The royal official is convinced that he is included in the invitation because he is in the queen's favor. The royal official went out that day happy and in high spirits, calling together his friends, his wife. The royal official boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him, and how he elevated him above the other nobles and officials. I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave, and she invited me along with the king tomorrow. Esther chapter 5, verses 9 through 12. Little does the royal official know that on this faithful day someone will be honored, but that someone won't be him. At the advice of his wife and friends, the official orders a gallows 50 cubits high, 75 feet, to be built, on which he intends to have Mordecai hanged. But while the official's workmen are busily building the gallows, the king has a sleepless night and orders that the book of memorable deeds during his reign be read to him. Found within its pages the account of Mordecai's heroism in saving the king's life. The following morning, the royal official arrives at the palace, intending to top off his enjoyment of the banquet by manipulating the king to agree to his request to have Mordecai hanged. But the king first asks the official what should be done for the man the king delights to honor. Confident the king must be referring to him, the royal official proposes placing royal robes and a crown on the man, and having a noble official lead him on one of the king's horses through the city square, proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." While the royal official is indeed part of the king's plan, his role is beside the horse, not on it. Humiliated, the royal official leads Mordecai, mounted on a noble steed, through the city streets for all to see. Entirely mortified by his enemy Mordecai, the royal official returns home after the public spectacle. There he receives from his wife and friends a prophetic message, not of hope, but of doom. Since Mordecai before whom your downfall has started is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin. Those who create conflict and those who keep it going can generally be divided into two groups: attackers and avoiders. 3 aggressive attackers: wolves. Wolves are fierce, savage, and cruel animals that make a terrible howling sound and attack even large animals. They possess immense stamina and can travel long distances. They use scent markings to claim their territory, communicating, "This territory is occupied, this territory is mine." The word wolf is also used in reference to people who are known to be wolves in sheep's clothing. They cloak their harmful intentions behind a harmless facade. Known to be forward, direct, zealous in the seduction of women. Known to wolf down food, eating greedily, devouring their food like prey. The Bible describes the destruction wolves can cause. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 27. Her officials within her are like wolves tearing their prey. They shed blood and kill people to make unjust gain. Snakes, serpents, vipers. These are creeping creatures that can also move rapidly. Although many snakes are harmless, they are most often feared for their hissing, rattling, biting, and striking. They inflict burning pain and cause inflammation where they bite. Considered cunning and subtle, they can also be malicious and deadly. The word serpent is also used in reference to people who are known to be dangerous and treacherous, known to inject injurious venom into people or groups by poisoning their minds, hearts, or reputation. Known to act silently, secretly, and slanderously to inflict injury on others. The Bible describes the destructive nature of serpents. Psalm 140, verse 3. They make their tongues as sharp as serpents. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Hornets. Hornets are any of the larger social wasps that can bite and sting at the same time. Just one hornet can mobilize an entire nest to sting aggressively. In a swarm, they can drive cattle and horses to madness, and their formidable stings can also kill human beings. I guess big shout out to the Charlotte Hornets then. The word hornet, The word hornet is also used in reference to people who are known to be excessively angry or mad as a hornet. Known to gather others to swarm a person. Oh, I see where they get that from. Known to gather others to swarm a person or place, thus creating havoc or harm with stings. For example, accusations, threats, attacks, etc. Known to build a hornet's nest of angry, assaulting people who can literally be deadly. Maybe the city has taken on that. I'm sorry, let me get back. The Bible depicts their devastating ability in this description. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. Also, the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. 3 passive avoiders. Tortoises. Tortoises are protected by a large dome-shaped shell that are difficult for predators to crack. They withdraw their necks into their shells by folding them under their spines or folding their necks to the side. Tortoises possess excellent nighttime vision but poor daytime vision because of their color blindness. They have short, sturdy feet and are famous for moving slowly, partly because of their heavy shells, but also because of their relatively insufficient sprawling gait. The word tortoise or turtle is also used in reference to people who are known for being slow, known for withdrawing into a shell, known for dawdling responsibility. The Bible states this about lizards, which includes tortoises. These are unclean for you. Any kind of great lizard. Chameleons. Chameleons can change to a variety of colors: brown, green, blue, yellow, red, black, or white, in response to temperature, light, and mood. A calm chameleon can be green, but when angry, it can turn yellow. Chameleons possess elongated tongues that help reach up to twice the length of their bodies. Their eyes move independently of each other, giving them sharp, stereoscopic vision and depth perception. The word chameleon is also used in reference to people who are known to change their minds, even their character, but only superficially, merely to be expedient. Known for their quick or frequent changes, especially in appearance, in order to fit in. Known to blend in with diverse groups by reflecting each other's group's look, behavior, and belief when with the group. The Bible states these are unclean for you. The chameleon. Weasels. Weasels have a reputation for cleverness and guile, especially as they perform a hypnotic dance in front of their prey. These small furry animals can twist and burrow down into small holes. They produce a thick, oily, powerful smelling liquid called musk, used for scent marking and defense. The word weasel is also used in reference to people who are known to act deviously, known to use weasel words in order to be evasive, known to evade or escape from a situation. The Bible states these are unclean for you. The weasel. What is God's heart on conflict resolution? During the second feast, the next day, at the king's urging, Queen Esther finally makes a request for her people to be spared from annihilation by the crafty snake. Not only does the king grant her request, but in his rage, he has that royal official hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. That royal official is indeed elevated, but not in the way he expected. Instead of remaining empowered to see the destruction of the Jewish people, he had a short stop and a sudden drop from grace with the king. After a time of great conflict, true resolution resonates throughout the land for the Jewish people. If Esther had avoided the conflict, retracting from trouble like a turtle, she would not be recognized today as a national hero and choice servant of God. Instead, she confronted the conflict and rose to the occasion for such a time as this. The Bible says there is a time for everything, a time to be silent and a time to speak. The story of Esther teaches conflicts can be used to accomplish God's purpose. Only after becoming queen was she able to save the Jewish nation. We'll leave that alone. Esther chapter 4, verse 14. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? We know that in all things God works for the good of those who loves him, who have been called according to his purpose. Conflicts cannot always be avoided. Esther and the Jewish people could not escape that top royal official's threats. In Esther chapter 4, verse 13, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Conflicts that are resolved require advanced preparation and planning. At Esther's direction, the Jews fasted before she planned to willingly go before the king on behalf of the Jews. In Esther chapter 4, verse 16, go, gather all the Jews who are in the main capital, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Conflicts are not necessarily bad. They can actually sharpen us if we respond correctly. Handled well, they provide an opportunity for role modeling. For centuries, Esther has been and continues to be a role model of how to make an appeal to a higher authority. Esther chapter 5, verses 7 through 8. Esther replied, my petition and my request is this. If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and the top royal official come tomorrow to the banquet that I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life. And that the Lord, I'm sorry, let me just read that one more time. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Conflicts can sometimes be settled through negotiation. Esther graciously negotiated with the king. Esther chapter 7, verses 3 through 4. Then the queen answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet. But no such distress would justify disturbing the king. Listen to advice and accept discipline. And at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Conflicts that are resolved require action toward peace. Due to the queen's intervention, the king took actions that allowed the Jews to assemble and to defend themselves. Esther chapter 8, verse 11. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder their property of their enemies. Romans chapter 14, verse 19. Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to worship God with me.